Katie Morrison pressed her back against the cold concrete wall and listened. The silence above ground was complete now. No cars, no voices, no life at all. Just the distant hum of alien ships patrolling the dead streets of New York City. She clutched, her violin case tighter against her chest. 3 months ago, she had been on stage at Carnegie Hall, playing for 2,000 people. The audience had been clapping when the first explosions lit up the sky outside. Now those same people were gone, turned to ash by the Zenthari weapons. "Katie, come back here," Danny Cooper whispered from deeper in the subway tunnel. "They might hear you." Katie crept back to where the others were sitting around their small camp. Danny was hunched over his radio equipment, wires, and circuit boards, spread across an old milk crate. He was 50 years old, with gray hair and thick glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. Before the invasion, he had been a radio engineer. Now he was their only link to the outside world. "Any word from the other groups?" Lisa Parker asked. She sat cleaning her rifle, the only weapon they had managed to salvage from the ruins above. Lisa had been a communications officer in the Army before the aliens came. She was the reason they were still alive. Danny shook his head. "Nothing since yesterday. Chicago went quiet, and I can't raise anyone in Los Angeles anymore." Ben Harrison looked up from the laptop he was trying to repair. The 17-year-old had been a computer science student at NYU when the world ended. His fingers moved quickly over the broken keyboard, trying to coax life from the damaged machine. "Maybe they're just laying low," Ben said. "Like us." Katie sat down on an old subway bench they had dragged into their makeshift camp. The platform they called home was deep underground, part of an abandoned line that had been closed for years. It was cold and damp, but it was safe. The aliens seemed to avoid going too deep into the earth. "I picked up something strange today," Danny said, adjusting dials on his radio. Static filled the air, mixed with sounds that made Katie's skin crawl. The alien communications were unlike anything human ears were meant to hear. "Strange how?" Lisa asked. Danny frowned at his equipment. "Well, you know how their signals are always perfectly synchronized? Like they're all reading from the same script?" The others nodded. They had all heard the eerie coordination in the owl. Alien transmissions. Every Zenthari ship, every patrol, every communication happened in perfect harmony. It was like listening to a machine. Today, for about 10 minutes, their signals got messy. Overlapping, out of sync, like something was jamming them. Katie felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold tunnel. What could jam them? "I thought their technology was too advanced for us to interfere with." "That's just it," Danny said. "I don't think it was our technology doing it." Ben stopped typing and looked over. Then what was it? Danny pulled out a small recorder and pressed play. The speakers crackled with the usual alien sounds, but Katie could hear what Danny meant. The perfect synchronization was broken. The signals stuttered and overlapped like an orchestra, where half the musicians were playing the wrong song. "When did this happen?" Katie asked. "Around 2 o'clock this afternoon." "Right about the time, double quotes." Danny paused and looked at Katie. "Right about the time you were practicing your violin." Katie blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm not saying anything yet, but I've been thinking about it all day." The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. Lisa stopped cleaning her rifle. "You think Katie's violin affected their communications?" "I think it's possible," Danny said. "Look, we know they communicate through electromagnetic frequencies. What if certain sound frequencies can interfere with those signals?" Ben's eyes lit up. "That actually makes sense. Sound waves can create electromagnetic interference under the right conditions. And if their entire communication system is based on precise frequency coordination, then any disruption could cause problems," Lisa finished. Katie opened her violin case and lifted out the instrument. It was a beautiful piece, over 100 years old, given to her by her grandmother. Somehow, it had survived the destruction of Carnegie Hall when everything else had been reduced to rubble. "Play something," Danny said, positioning himself in his radio equipment. Katie hesitated. "What if they hear us? We're deep enough underground. And if I'm right about this, we need to know." Katie lifted the violin to her shoulder and began to play. She chose a piece by Bach, something she knew by heart. The music echoed through the tunnel, a lonely but beautiful sound in the darkness. Danny watched his equipment carefully. At first, nothing happened. The alien signals continued their usual perfect coordination. But then, as Katie moved into a more complex passage, the static changed. "There," Danny whispered. "Do you hear that?" The alien communications were becoming disjointed again. Not as much as before, but definitely losing their perfect synchronization. Katie stopped playing, and within moments, the alien signals returned to normal. "My God," Lisa breathed. "It actually works." Ben was typing frantically on his laptop. "This changes everything. If we can disrupt their communications, we can coordinate our own resistance efforts." Katie stared at her violin. "But how is this possible?" "It's just music." "Just music?" Danny laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Katie, music might be the most human thing there is. These aliens, they think and act like a hive mind. Everything perfectly coordinated, no improvisation, no creativity. But music is chaos and beauty and emotion all mixed together. Maybe that's exactly what their perfect system can't handle." Lisa stood up and began pacing. "If this works, we need to get word to other survivor groups. They need to know. But first, we need to test it more," Danny said. "Katie, can you play again? Something different this time." Katie nodded and began a piece by Mozart. The effect was immediate and stronger. The alien communications dissolved into complete chaos for several minutes, before gradually returning to their synchronized pattern. "It's not just any music," Ben observed. "Classical pieces seem to work better than simple melodies. Because they're more complex," Katie realized, "more unpredictable, more human." Danny was already working on his radio, adjusting frequencies and checking connections. "If we can broadcast this, we might be able to reach other survivor groups, create a network, and disrupt alien operations at the same time," Lisa added. Katie looked at her violin with new understanding. For 3 months, she had carried it as a reminder of the world they had lost. Now it might be the key to getting that world back. "When do we start?" she asked. Danny smiled for the first time in weeks. "Tomorrow night. We're going to give the galaxy something it's never heard before. We're going to give them human music." In the depths of the New York subway system, 4 survivors began planning humanity's strangest counterattack. Above them, the alien ships continued their patrol, unaware that their greatest weakness was about to become humanity's greatest weapon. Danny adjusted the antenna one more time and nodded to Katie. She lifted her violin and began to play a piece by Beethoven. The music filled the tunnel, echoing off the concrete walls. On his radio equipment, Danny watched the alien signals break, apart like waves hitting rocks. "Perfect," he whispered. "Hold that note longer." Katie stretched the high note, and the alien communications collapsed completely. For 30 seconds, there was nothing but static where their perfect coordination had been. It had been a week since they discovered that music could disrupt the Xanthari signals. Every day, Katie played while Danny recorded and analyzed the effects. They were learning more about their enemy with each performance. "They communicate like a giant brain," Ben explained to Lisa as he typed notes on his laptop. "Each alien is like a single brain cell. When Katie plays, it's like jamming the connections between those cells." Lisa nodded, though she still found it hard to believe. So they can't think straight when we play music? Exactly. And the more complex the music, the worse it gets for them. Danny turned up the volume on his radio. Katie, try that passage again, but slower this time. As Katie played, Danny fine-tuned his equipment. He had been working for days to boost their signal strength. If they could broadcast Katie's music over a wider area, they might reach other survivors. There, Danny said suddenly. I'm getting something. Through the static came a faint voice. Hello? Is someone out there? This is Chicago calling. Danny grabbed his microphone. Chicago, this is New York. We hear you. The voice on the other end sounded excited. New York? Thank God. We thought everyone on the East Coast was gone. Not yet, Danny replied. What's your situation? Bad. We've got maybe 200 people hiding in the old subway tunnels. The aliens patrol the surface constantly. We can barely move around. Katie stopped playing, and immediately the alien. Signals on Danny's other radio returned to their perfect coordination. Listen carefully, Danny said into the microphone. Do you have anyone who can play music? Any instrument at all? Music? Why would we need music? Danny looked at Katie. Play something short, he said. Katie played a quick melody, just 30 seconds of Mozart. On the radio, they could hear the Chicago survivor talking to someone in the background. Did you hear that music just now? The voice from Chicago asked. Yes, we heard it. But why ... Look at your alien scanner, Danny interrupted. Are their patrol signals different now? There was a long pause. Then the voice came back, full of amazement. How did you know? Their signals just went crazy. There? Flying in circles up there, Danny smiled. Because music is a weapon, and we're going to teach you how to use it. Over the next hour, Danny explained everything they had learned. The man in Chicago was named Rick Stone, and he had been a music teacher before the invasion. He had an old guitar and knew others with instruments. This changes everything, Rick said. If we can disrupt their patrols, we can move supplies, rescue more people. That's just the beginning, Danny replied. We think we can use different pieces of music to send coded messages, like a musical language. Katie had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. I've been thinking about that too. Different composers, different tempos, different keys. We could create a whole communication system. Ben looked up from his laptop. I can help with that. Create a code system where each piece of music means something different. Over the following days, their network grew. Rick in Chicago had found 12 other survivors with instruments. A woman named Amy Chun in Denver had a piano in an underground shelter. She was a scientist and immediately understood the importance of their discovery. The frequencies that work best are between 440 and 880 hertz. Amy reported during one of their daily radio calls. That's the range of most musical instruments. It's like they can't process those specific wavelengths when they're organized as music. Katie practiced for hours each day, learning to play pieces that would have specific meanings. A Bach piece meant all clear, safe to move. A Vivaldi concerto meant alien patrol approaching. A piece by Mozart meant emergency, need help. It's like we're creating a musical army, Lisa said one evening as she listened to Katie practice. Each note is a soldier. But the aliens were learning too. After 2 weeks of musical disruptions, the Centauri began changing their patrol patterns. They started avoiding areas where the musical interference was strongest. They're adapting, Amy reported from Denver. The ones near my location have started using different frequencies for their communications. Danny frowned at his equipment. And we need to adapt too. Katie, can you play something in a higher register? Katie tried playing the same piece, an octave higher. The effect on the alien signals was different, but still disruptive. They can adjust their communication frequencies, Ben realized. but they can't make themselves immune to music entirely. It's like trying to make your brain immune to chaos. As their network expanded, they discovered more survivor groups. A former NASA engineer named Jack Miller in Houston had managed to build a more powerful radio transmitter. Grace Wilson in London was organizing resistance fighters in the underground tunnels. "We're not just survivors anymore," Rick said during one of their group calls. "We're becoming a resistance movement." But with success came danger. The aliens had noticed that their perfect coordination was being disrupted in specific locations around the world. They began sending special units to investigate. "They're looking for us," Lisa reported after monitoring alien communications for a day. "I can hear them trying to triangulate the source of the interference." Danny packed up his equipment quickly. "Then we need to move. We can't broadcast from the same location twice." As they gathered their supplies, Katie carefully placed her violin back in its case. The instrument that had once played for concert halls was now humanity's secret weapon. "Where do we go next?" Ben asked, shouldering his backpack with the computer equipment. "Deeper," Lisa replied, checking her rifle. "They don't like going too far underground. And there are miles of abandoned tunnels under this city." As they moved through the dark subway passages, Katie thought about how much had changed. A month ago, they had been hiding and hoping to survive. Now they were part of something bigger. Every day, their musical broadcasts reached more survivors. Every day, the network grew stronger. Behind them, they could hear the alien ships above. Ground their engines making the tunnel walls vibrate. But Katie wasn't afraid anymore. She had her violin, and her violin had power. "Danny," she said as they walked through the darkness, "tomorrow I want to try something new. Something they've never heard before. What do you have in mind?" Katie smiled in the darkness. "Jazz. If classical music confuses them, wait until they hear improvisation." Above ground, the alien ships continued their search, not knowing that deep below, humanity was composing a symphony of resistance that would grow louder every day. Katie drew her bow across the violin strings and began to play jazz. The music was wild and unpredictable, nothing like the classical pieces she usually performed. She bent notes, added unexpected rhythms, and let the melody wander wherever it wanted to go. On Danny's radio equipment, the alien signals didn't just get disrupted. They went completely insane. "Katie, look at this," Danny said, staring at his screens in amazement. The perfect waves of Centauri communication had turned into jagged lines that looked like a child's scribbles. Ben whistled softly. "It's like their entire network is having a breakdown." Lisa was monitoring the alien patrol frequencies on her scanner. "I can hear them up there. They're flying in random directions. Some of them have stopped moving completely." Katie continued, playing, letting the jazz flow through her fingers. She had learned this style from her uncle, who had played saxophone in New York clubs. Back then, she had thought jazz was too messy, too uncontrolled. Now that Messines's was exactly what they needed, the radio crackled with voices from their network. Rick in Chicago was laughing. "Whatever you're playing, don't stop. The aliens here are acting like they're drunk." Amy's voice came from Denver. "The electromagnetic readings are off the charts. Their hive mind connection is completely scrambled." Grace called in from London. "This is incredible. We just rescued 50 people from a collapsed building. The alien guards were so confused, they didn't even notice us." Katie played for 20 minutes straight, improvising and changing the rhythm constantly. When she finally stopped, the silence seemed strange after so much chaos. "The jazz works better than anything we've tried," Danny said, reviewing his recordings. "The improvisation seems to be the key. They can adapt to patterns, but they can't predict something that has no pattern." Over the next week, their network exploded in size. Word spread through survivor groups around the world. Musicians who had been hiding came forward with their instruments. Rock guitarists, folk singers, drummers, even harmonica players joined the resistance. Tony Martinez in Mexico City had an entire mariachi band hiding in subway tunnels. "We can make their heads spin," he reported after their first broadcast. "The trumpets and violins together create amazing interference." Jack Miller in Houston had built transmitters powerful enough to reach across state lines. "I'm picking up signals from as far as California," he told them during a group call. "There are musicians everywhere, just waiting for someone to coordinate them." But the most important addition to their network was someone they had never expected. Her name was Susan Clark, and she called in from what used to be Washington, D.C. "I was the White House communications director," she said over the radio. "I have access to government emergency broadcast systems. If you can teach me this musical warfare, I can reach every surviving radio in North America." Danny's hands shook as he adjusted his equipment. "You mean we could coordinate a continent-wide broadcast?" "More than that," Susan replied. "I still have contacts with resistance groups in Europe and Asia. We could make this global." Katie felt her heart racing. What had started as 4 people hiding in a subway tunnel was becoming something much bigger. Ben had been working day and night to create their musical code system. "I figured out how to use different instruments for different messages," he explained to the group. "Violin means general communication. Guitar means supply drops. Drums mean attack formations. And if we play them together in certain combinations, we can send complex tactical information." The system was tested the next day. Katie played violin while Rick in Chicago played guitar, and a drummer in Denver kept rhythm. The combination created a musical message that told survivor groups in 12 cities to coordinate a supply run at the same time. The operation was a complete success. While the aliens were struggling with the musical interference, resistance fighters moved freely through the streets, gathering supplies and rescuing trapped survivors. "We saved over 300 people today," Grace reported from London. And the aliens never knew what hit them. A success brought new dangers. The Zenthari had realized that the musical interference wasn't random. They began deploying special hunting units to track down the sources of the broadcast. Lisa was monitoring alien communications when she heard something that chilled her blood. "They're talking about finding the noisemakers," she told the others. "They figured out that humans are causing the interference." Danny looked worried. "How long before they track us down?" "Not long," Lisa replied. "They're using some kind of advanced direction-finding equipment. Every time we broadcast, they get a better fix on our location." Katie opened her violin case and looked at the instrument that had started it all. "And we need to move faster. How many cities are in our network now?" Ben checked his lists. 47 cities across 6 continents. Over 2,000 musicians, ready to play on command. That's our advantage, Katie realized. They can hunt down one broadcast location, but they can't hunt down 2,000. Susan's voice came over the radio from Washington. "I've been thinking the same thing. If we coordinate simultaneous broadcasts from every location, they won't know which signal to track." Amy added her scientific knowledge. "And if we're all playing at the same time, the interference will be so widespread that their entire communication network will collapse." The plan began to take shape. They would coordinate the largest musical performance in human history. Every musician in their network would play at exactly the same time, creating a planet-wide symphony of resistance. "We'll need perfect timing," Danny said. "Everyone has to start playing at the exact same moment." "I can handle that," Susan replied. "The emergency broadcast system can send a synchronized signal to every radio on Earth." Katie practiced constantly, preparing for the performance of her life. She composed a new piece that combined classical structure with jazz improvisation, something that would be both beautiful and completely chaotic to alien minds. Rick called from Chicago with exciting news. I found a whole orchestra hiding in the basement of the Symphony Hall. 30 musicians, all ready to fight with their instruments. Grace reported similar discoveries in London. The Royal Philharmonic has 12 survivors. They want to play. As their network grew, Katie began to understand what they were really doing. They weren't just disrupting alien communications. They were proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons. It was creativity, the unpredictable spark that made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. The aliens think like a machine, she told the others one evening. Perfect, predictable, efficient. But music is the opposite of that. Music is pure human spirit. Danny was fine-tuning their broadcast equipment for the global performance. When? Do we do this? Katie looked around at her friends, these brave people who had become her family in the darkness. Above them, alien ships still patrolled the dead city. But soon, those ships would hear something they had never experienced before. Tomorrow night, Katie said, we're going to give the galaxy a concert it will never forget. The alien ship hovered directly above their tunnel entrance, its blue scanning beams cutting through the darkness like deadly fingers. Katie held her breath and pressed herself against the concrete wall, clutching her violin case. They're getting closer, Lisa whispered, checking her scanner. 3 more ships just landed 6 blocks away. Danny was frantically packing his radio equipment. After broadcasting for 3 weeks from the same location, the Zentari had finally tracked them down. The hunting units were closing in. We need to move now, he said, throwing cables into a bag. They'll be down here in minutes. Ben grabbed his laptop and the portable transmitter they had built. Where do we go? They've got the whole area surrounded. Katie looked down the dark tunnel that stretched away into the depths of the subway. System, deeper. There are abandoned sections they don't know about. As they moved through the tunnels, Katie's radio crackled with urgent voices from around the world. Their global network was under attack everywhere. Rick's voice came from Chicago, broken by static. They hit us hard. Had to abandon our main transmitter. We're moving to backup location. Grace reported from London. Lost contact with 3 of our musician groups. The hunting units are everywhere. But even as some groups went silent, others stepped forward to take their place. Amy's voice from Denver was calm and determined. We've got new musicians joining us every hour. Word is spreading faster than they can hunt us down. Susan called in from Washington with crucial intelligence. I've been monitoring their communications. They're calling this operation Silence. They think if they can stop the music, they can restore their hive mind control. Tony's voice came from Mexico City, where mariachi music had been driving the aliens crazy for days. Let them come. We have musicians in every subway tunnel, every basement, every cave in the city. They can't silence us all. Katie and her group found a new hiding place in an abandoned train maintenance facility deep underground. The space was large enough for Danny to set up his equipment, and the thick concrete walls would block most scanning attempts. We can't keep running forever, Lisa said as she helped Danny string up antennas. Eventually they'll find us. Then we make every broadcast count, Katie replied, taking out her violin. How many cities are still online? Ben checked his lists on the laptop. 63 cities now. Even though they're hunting us, more musicians keep joining the network. Danny turned on his radio and began scanning frequencies. What he heard made him smile. From around the world came the sound of music. Jazz from New Orleans, where survivors had found instruments in flooded clubs. Classical music from Vienna, where an entire orchestra was playing in subway tunnels. Rock and roll from Detroit, where garage bands had turned their basements into broadcast stations. They're not winning, Danny said. Every time they silence one group, 2 more start playing. Katie began her evening broadcast, playing a piece she had composed that mixed classical violin with jazz improvisation. The music echoed through the tunnel and traveled across the radio, waves to listeners around the world. On Danny's monitoring equipment, they could see the immediate effect. Alien patrol ships in their area began flying erratically. Some landed unexpectedly, their pilots apparently confused and disoriented. The effect is getting stronger, Ben observed. I think their hive mind is starting to break down permanently. Rick's voice came over the radio from Chicago. We're seeing individual aliens acting strange. Some of them are just standing around, like they don't know what to do. Grace added from London. 3 aliens surrendered to our group yesterday. They seemed confused and scared, like they were thinking for themselves for the first time. Amy's scientific analysis from Denver was fascinating. I've been studying their behavior patterns. The constant musical interference is severing their connections to the hive mind. They're becoming individuals, and they don't know how to handle it. But the Centauri commanders were not giving up. Susan reported from Washington that they were bringing in new types of hunting equipment, devices that could track musical broadcasts through solid rock. They've got some kind of harmonic analyzer, she warned. It can identify the exact frequency signature of each instrument and track it to its source. Danny looked at his equipment with new worry. How long before they find us again? Maybe hours, Susan replied. Maybe minutes. Katie made a decision. She opened her violin case and began to play, but this time she did something different. Instead of playing a composed piece, she began to improvise completely, letting the music flow wherever it wanted to go. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The alien signals on Danny's equipment didn't just get disrupted, they collapsed entirely. For 15 minutes, there was complete silence from the Centauri communication network. Katie, what are you doing? Danny asked in amazement. Something they can't predict or track, she replied, still playing. If I never play the same thing twice, they can't lock onto my signal. The idea spread through their network like wildfire. Musicians around the world began improvising, creating music that had never been played before and would never be played again. Jazz musicians led the way, but even classical players began adding their own variations to well-known pieces. Tony reported from Mexico City. The mariachi players are going crazy with improvisation. Every song is different every time. The aliens are flying in circles, Rick added from Chicago. The rock bands are having the most fun. They're making up songs on the spot, and the aliens can't handle it. But the improvisation strategy came with a cost. It was exhausting to play constantly changing music, and many musicians were reaching their limits. I can't keep this up much longer, Katie admitted after playing for 2 hours straight. Her fingers were cramping, and her shoulder ached. Then we take turns, Grace suggested from London. If musicians in different time zones play in shifts, we can keep the interference going around the clock. Amy worked out the schedule. When it's night in Europe, it's day in Asia. When America is sleeping, Australia is awake. We can have continuous global coverage. The plan worked perfectly. As Katie finally stopped playing and rested her tired hands, musicians on the other side of the world picked up the musical assault. The aliens found no relief from the chaos, no time to restore their hive mind connections. But success brought even more danger. The Xanthari were getting desperate, and desperate enemies were the most dangerous kind. Susan's voice came over the radio with urgent news. They're pulling back their hunting units. All of them from every city. That's good news, right? Ben asked. No, Susan replied grimly. They're massing for something big. Satellite imagery shows them gathering in large formations above major cities. I think they're planning to attack all musician locations simultaneously. Katie looked at her violin, the instrument that had started this global war of music against machine. Tomorrow, They would face their greatest test yet. Then we better get ready for the biggest concert of our lives, she said. Katie's fingers moved across the violin strings, writing the most important piece of music in human history. She had been composing for 3 days straight, barely stopping to eat or sleep. The piece she was creating would either save humanity or be humanity's final song. How much longer? Benny asked, watching alien ships gather in the sky above New York through his periscope. Hundreds of Xanthari vessels were assembling for their final attack. Almost finished, Katie replied, making notes on a piece of paper. This has to be perfect. Every frequency, every harmony, every rhythm calculated to cause maximum disruption to their hive mind. Ben was working frantically on his laptop, coordinating with musicians around the world. I've got confirmations from 87 cities. Everyone knows the plan. When you start playing, they all start playing. Lisa checked her weapons one more time. And if the music doesn't work, then we fight with whatever we have left, Katie said simply. The plan was massive and desperate. Every musician in their global network would play simultaneously, creating the largest musical performance in history. But this wouldn't be just any concert. Katie had composed a special piece that combined every effective frequency they had, discovered every rhythm that disrupted alien communications, every harmony that confused their hive mind. Amy's voice came over the radio from Denver. I've run the calculations 3 times. If everyone plays your composition at the same time, the electromagnetic interference should be powerful enough to permanently damage their collective consciousness. What do you mean permanently? Rick asked from Chicago. I mean, we might not. Just disrupt their hive mind, Amy explained. We might destroy it completely, turn them into individuals forever. Grace called in from London with updates from Europe. Every orchestra, every rock band, every street musician in the underground is ready. We've even got children with toy instruments. Tony reported from Mexico City. The mariachi bands are positioned throughout the city. When this starts, the whole place will sound like the world's biggest festival. Jack's voice came from Houston, where he had built the most powerful transmitter in their network. I can boost the signal to reach every radio on the continent. But Kelly, once we start this, there's no going back. The aliens will know exactly where every musician is located. Katie understood. This was their final gamble. Either the music would save them, or the aliens would destroy every musician on Earth in retaliation. Susan called from Washington with a countdown. Satellite imagery shows alien ships in position above every major city. They're ready to attack. Simultaneously, we need to start the broadcast in exactly 1 hour. Katie spent the remaining time going over her composition one last time. She had written it in sections, like movements in a symphony, but each section was designed to work with instruments from different cultures and musical traditions. The first movement was pure classical violin, building from a single note to complex harmonies that would establish the bass interference pattern. The second movement brought in guitars and other string instruments from around the world, creating layers of disruption. The third movement added wind instruments, trumpets, flutes, saxophones from every continent. The fourth movement brought in percussion, the drums and cymbals that would drive the rhythm of resistance. But the final movement was something special. Katie had composed it for every human voice on Earth. Everyone sings the finale? Ben asked, reading through the composition. Everyone, Katie confirmed. Even people without instruments. Humming, singing, shouting, any sound a human can make. The aliens have never heard billions of humans all making noise at the same time. Danny made final adjustments to his broadcasting equipment. Are you sure this will work? Katie picked up her violin and tested the strings. No, but it's the most human thing we can do. Make music together, even when we're scared, even when we might die. Lisa was monitoring alien communications. They're moving into attack position. All ships are armed and ready. Susan's voice came over the emergency broadcast system. This is it, everyone. In 60 seconds, we make history. Musicians ready? Around the world, thousands of people picked up their instruments. In subway tunnels and basement shelters, in caves and hidden rooms, musicians prepared to play the most important concert of their lives. 30 seconds. Susan announced. Katie closed her eyes and thought about her grandmother, who had given her the violin. She thought about the audience at Carnegie Hall on that last night before the world changed. She thought about all the music that had been silenced by the invasion, and all the music that would be born if they succeeded. 10 seconds, Susan called. Katie raised her violin and placed it under her chin. 5 4 3 2 Now, Katie drew her bow across the strings and began to play. The opening notes of her composition echoed through the tunnel and transmitted across Danny's radio equipment to the world. Instantly, she was joined by thousands of other musicians. Rick's guitar from Chicago, Amy's piano from Denver, Grace's violin from London, Tony's trumpet from Mexico City. Orchestra members in Vienna, rock bands in Detroit, jazz musicians in New Orleans, folk singers in Ireland, and traditional musicians from every continent on Earth. The music was unlike anything that had ever been heard before. It was not one song, but thousands of songs playing in perfect harmony, each musician adding their own cultural voice to the global symphony. On Danny's monitoring equipment, the effect was immediate and devastating. The alien communication network didn't just get disrupted, it exploded. Every perfect signal dissolved into chaos. Every coordinated command became meaningless noise. Above ground, the Centauri ships began flying erratically. Some crashed into buildings. Others simply stopped moving, floating motionless in the sky as their pilots struggled to think without the hive mind's guidance. But the aliens weren't giving up without a fight. Lisa could hear their attack ships diving toward musician locations around the world. They're bombing the broadcast sites, she reported. Chicago is under attack. London is taking heavy fire. Katie played harder, pouring every emotion into the music. Around the world, musicians continued playing even as alien weapons destroyed their shelters. Some groups went silent, but others immediately took their place. Phase 2, Katie called out, moving into the second movement of her composition. New instruments joined the global orchestra. Guitars from 1,000 rock bands, sitars from India, didgeridoos from Australia, traditional drums from Africa. The music became even more complex, even more chaotic, even more human. The alien communications network was completely paralyzed. Now, ships collided with each other in the sky. Ground troops wandered aimlessly through empty streets. The perfect coordination that had made them so dangerous was gone. Phase 3, Katie announced, her violin singing with the voices of wind instruments from around the world. But even as the music reached new heights, the alien attacks intensified. Half their broadcast locations had been destroyed. Musicians were dying, but the survivors kept playing. Final movement, Katie called, beginning the piece she had written for every human voice on Earth. And then something magical happened. People who had been hiding in silence for months began to sing. The sound started as a whisper. Hidden deep in basements and subway tunnels, people who had been silent for months began to hum along with Katie's violin. Then the whisper became a murmur, and the murmur became a roar that shook the earth itself. Katie played with tears streaming down her face as she heard it through Danny's radio. From every continent in every language, humans were singing. Children who had hidden in darkness for months lifted their voices. Elderly people who had given up hope found strength to join the chorus. Even soldiers and fighters stopped shooting to add their voices to the global song. "Listen to that," Danny whispered. adjusting his equipment to capture the incredible sound. The whole world is singing. Ben was crying as he typed on his laptop, watching reports flood in from around the globe. People are coming out of hiding everywhere. They're singing in the streets, on rooftops, in bombed-out buildings. The aliens can't stop them all. Above ground, the effect on the Xanthari was catastrophic. Lisa watched through her periscope as alien ships simply fell from the sky. Their pilots were no longer connected to the hive mind and didn't know how to fly their own vessels. "The big command ship is going down," Lisa reported. "It just crashed into the Hudson River." But the aliens weren't finished. Ground troops were storming into the subway system, desperately trying to find and stop the source of the musical chaos. Katie could hear their metallic footsteps echoing through the tunnels, getting closer. "Keep playing," Danny urged, even as he packed up his radio equipment. "The world needs to hear you." Katie didn't stop. Her violin sang louder and clearer than ever before, carrying the melody that had become humanity's battle cry. Around the world, the response was overwhelming. Rick's voice came from Chicago, shouting over the sound of celebration. "The aliens here just surrendered. 30 of them walked up to our people and laid down their weapons. They look confused, but not hostile anymore," Grace reported from London. "Same thing here. Individual aliens are approaching our groups. They seem to want to understand what music is." Amy's scientific voice came from Denver, filled with excitement. "The hive mind is completely shattered. Every alien is now an individual consciousness. They're experiencing emotions and independent thought for the first time in their species' history." But Katie's group wasn't safe yet. The footsteps in the tunnel were getting louder. Lisa raised her rifle, ready to defend their broadcast position to the end. "3 aliens coming down the main tunnel," she reported. "They're armed, but moving slowly." Katie played even harder, her violin screaming with defiance. If these were her final moments, she would make them count. The 3 Xanthari soldiers appeared at the edge of their camp, their weapons ready. But something was different about them. They moved hesitantly, looking around with what seemed like curiosity rather than aggression. One of them stepped forward and did something no one expected. It laid down its weapon. "What ... is ... sound?" the alien asked in broken English. Its mechanical voice, filled with wonder, got Katie stopped playing, breathing hard. The silence felt strange after so much music. "It's called music," she said simply. The alien tilted its head, a very human gesture. "Music? We have never ... experienced ... music. The hive mind did not permit individual sensation." Danny slowly stood up, his hands visible and empty. "You're not connected to your hive mind anymore?" "No," the second alien replied. "The connection is ... broken. We are ... alone." It is frightening, but also ... double quotes. It paused, searching for words. "Also wonderful." Lisa kept her rifle ready, but didn't point it at the aliens. "What do you want?" "To understand," the third alien said. "We heard the sounds. They made us feel ... something. We do not know the word." Katie picked up her violin again. "Would you like me to play something?" The aliens looked at each other, another surprisingly human behavior. The first one nodded. Katie began to play a gentle melody, something soft and beautiful. The aliens stood, perfectly still, listening with what could only be described as amazement. "It creates patterns in our consciousness," one of them said, "patterns we have never felt before." Ben was getting reports from around the world on his laptop. "Katie, you need to hear this. Aliens everywhere are laying down their weapons. They're asking humans to explain music to them." Susan's voice came over the emergency broadcast. "This is incredible. Former Xanthari commanders are requesting meetings with human leaders. They want to learn about individual consciousness and creative expression. Tony called from Mexico City with the most amazing report of all. We've got aliens here trying to play instruments. One of them is attempting to learn guitar. It's terrible, but it's trying. Katie laughed, a sound of pure joy. Play something else, she told the aliens in their tunnel. Let me teach you about different types of music. She played jazz and watched their heads move as they tried to follow the improvisation. She played classical music and saw them stand straighter as they felt the formal structure. She played a folk song and noticed them swaying slightly to the rhythm. Each style creates different emotions, one alien asked. Yes, Katie said. Music is how humans express feelings. Joy, sadness, love, hope. Every emotion can become music. Danny was monitoring communications from around the world. The global network is still singing, he reported. Even though the threat is over, people don't want to stop. And indeed, the singing continued. What had started as a weapon of war had become a celebration of humanity's survival. Cities that had been silent for months erupted in music. Orchestras reformed in the streets. Rock concerts began in subway stations. Children sang nursery rhymes while playing in rubble that was already being cleared for rebuilding. Grace called from London with an update that made Katie smile. The London Symphony has invited their local aliens to join them for a concert tomorrow. Apparently, the aliens want to learn to play human instruments, Rick reported from Chicago. We're teaching guitar lessons to former enemy soldiers. They're not very good yet, but they're enthusiastic. Amy's scientific mind was fascinated by the transformation. The aliens are developing individual personalities incredibly quickly. Each one is becoming unique, just like humans. Over the following weeks, the world changed in ways no one could have imagined. The Zenfari didn't leave Earth. Instead, they became the newest members of human society. Some learned to play instruments. Others became fascinated by human art and literature. Many chose human names and began living among the people. They had once tried to conquer. Katie found herself in an unexpected role as Earth's first interspecies music teacher. She gave concerts for mixed audiences of humans and former aliens, watching faces light up with wonder as they experienced the power of music. The violin that had once played for 2,000 people in Carnegie Hall now played for a world reborn. The radio broadcast that had started as Radio Gaze, seemingly meaningless noise, had proven to be the most meaningful sound in the galaxy. Danny continued running the global communications network, but now it carried music lessons and cultural exchanges instead of military coordinates. Ben developed translation software to help humans and aliens communicate through music when words weren't enough. Lisa became a peace officer, helping to integrate alien individuals into human communities. The weapon she had once used to fight now hung unused on the wall, replaced by the music that had won a war without destroying anyone. And late at night, when the world was quiet, Katie would still play her violin in the tunnels where it all began. Sometimes humans would gather to listen. Sometimes aliens would join them, learning to appreciate the chaotic beauty of human creativity. The galaxy had heard humanity's song, and it would never be the same again.